Now that you've created both a setting and a character, it's time for you to think about how are those going to interact? What kind of story are you going to write? So remember that we're talking about connections between people and setting. And now we're going to plan that narrative, the story. So, as we get going, think about this. When we wrote our essays or when we're doing analysis, we have a very structured way of writing, of developing our paragraphs, and that's for essay organization. But when we're writing a narrative, our organization is going to look very different. Remember that we talked about these parts of the plot diagram: the exposition, where we're setting the scene, the conflict, where there's a problem, rising action, the climax, the most important or like suspenseful part, that falling action, and then the resolution. So, with this story, our purpose is to look at setting and characters. You need to keep these things in mind. Think about what's going to happen in the setting, what's going to happen in the scene. Why does the setting matter to the character? And how does the setting impact the character? Or is there any impact that the character has on the setting? Somewhere in your scene, we should be seeing those connections. Now, to plan your story, you can choose your own adventure. There are a number of different ways you can do this. You could do a plot line for your story. You could do what's called a storyboard, where you're not necessarily thinking about that line, but first this happens, then this happens. And if you choose the storyboard, that's one that you could use to draw. Or you can do something called the guided outline approach, where you answer questions. I'm going to talk you through each of those. If you choose the plot diagram, there are two options. You can choose the really detailed one where you're filling in the blanks and it's kind of leading you through what to do. And this is what we've used with monsters and with other stories that we've read. Or you could do a more simple plot diagram writing template. There are links to both of these in the module. So, for example, when I think about my setting of this college campus in the Twin Cities and my character, my sister Amy, who's kind of like me but also different than me, then I might think about, okay, what's going to happen in this story? So I'd write the exposition, the beginning, where I'm explaining the setting. So just, writing some details about what that looks like. Then what's not in here, but what should be in here is that conflict. So I kind of combine the conflict and the rising action. So as a freshman, one of the things that I remember is being really like nervous about making friends and fitting in at the beginning of my college experience. I always wanted to leave my small town and come to the big city. And so I'm going to write about like Amy's first day of class. And she comes out of her room. She's really excited. She's trying to like, hey, make friends with people and like kind of figure out where she fits in. And it doesn't go as well as she thought. And by the end of the day, she is kind of having this like intellectual crisis or emotional crisis of like, this is what I thought I wanted, the setting where I was so excited to come to the city and to come to college. And now I don't feel like I belong. And so she's feeling like she makes no impact at all, that it doesn't matter where she is, and she's kind of missing her old setting. And then for a resolution, kind of at the end, she calls back home, calls her mom, who kind of talks her through things. So that's my little scene. I could organize it in a plot diagram. Now, your second option would be a storyboard. If you really want to draw out, even if it's just in stick figures, you could use the storyboard, gives you some big boxes to draw what's happening. And you could also write. So this is where I have those same six things happening, but instead of plotting it along that story, that plot diagram, I just put those into these six boxes. So sometimes our brains work better that way. Or you could do what's called the guided outline. And so with this, you're filling it, it's giving you questions that will help you think about what to write next. So if you're feeling a little stuck with your story, then the guided outline option might be the best one for you. You'll probably end up with the same thing, but this gives you want to read the questions, and then that will help you fill things in. So remember, this isn't writing out your whole story, this is planning your story. So you can do bullet points, drawings, whatever you'd like to get your ideas out. Also, remember, you might end up writing just a part of this when you're writing your whole scene, and we'll get to that part next. Ask me if you have any questions, and good luck doing your narrative outline.